Okay, ready to get real about post-separation abuse.
Oh, yeah.
We're going deep
Deep dive.
with Katie Gillis,
Okay.
a psychotherapist
Mm-hmm.
who's been there,
And they've done that.
personally and professionally.
Wow.
She literally wrote the books
Uh-huh.
on navigating the legal system
Yeah.
after a traumatic relationship.
Right.
Imagine a labyrinth
Uh-huh.
full of twists and turns and dead ends.
Yeah.
That's what she compares it to.
What's so fascinating is she doesn't just lay out, like, the legal complexities,
Right.
but also the psychological toll this type of abuse takes.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about more than just
Right.
restraining orders and court dates,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Right.
It's about understanding that deep-seated trauma
Yeah.
and the tactics abusers use to maintain control even after separation.
It's like abuse wearing an invisibility cloak.
It is.
Right.
It is.
And she's not holding back.
No.
Which is what makes her work so powerful.
Yeah.
She's got 2 books on this,
Okay.
Invisible Bruises.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not high conflict. It's post-separation abuse.
Really lays it out there. So
Tell me, where does someone even begin
Yeah.
to untangle this mess?
You're just thrown into the system that feels stacked against you.
Right.
Gillis actually says you practically need a law degree
Oh, wow.
just to understand the process.
Seriously.
And you're dealing with trauma,
Uh-huh.
trying to rebuild your life,
Yeah.
all while fighting for basic safety and security.
And it's not as simple as he said, she said, is it?
Not at all.
No.
Judges and attorneys often struggle to grasp the nuances of post-separation abuse.
Right.
They're looking for clear-cut evidence,
Yeah.
but the reality is far more insidious and complex.
It's like trying to explain a nightmare
It is.
to someone who's never had one.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
How do you bridge that gap?
Gillis emphasizes the importance of documentation.
Okay.
Every email, text message, voice note,
Wow.
it all matters. It's like building your case piece by painful piece.
I can only imagine how emotionally draining that must be
Oh,
to relive those interactions
it is.
over and over.
Yeah.
She even suggests having someone you trust
Yeah.
review these communications.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You need that support system.
Yeah.
Not just for the practical stuff,
Uh-huh.
but for your emotional well-being, too. Friends,
Mm-hmm.
family therapists.
Yeah.
Anyone who can offer a safe space
Right.
and a listening ear.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Gillis cautions against using terms like narcissist in court.
Oh.
Why is that?
She argues that it's become a bit of a buzzword
Okay.
and can actually backfire.
Uh-huh.
Think of it this way. You're trying to be taken seriously,
Yeah.
and suddenly you sound like you're armchair diagnosing.
Right.
It can make you seem vindictive rather than credible,
Right.
even if you're spot on
Interesting.
with the label.
So it's about focusing on the facts.
Yes.
The objective behaviors.
Yes.
Not trying to get inside the abuser's head.
Exactly.
Right.
You're dealing with this emotional whirlwind.
Yeah.
But the legal system wants cold, hard data.
Data. Data.
It's almost like detaching from your own experience
Wow.
to make it understandable to those who haven't walked in your shoes.
That's a skill in itself,
It is.
especially when you're still
Oh, yeah.
so close to the trauma.
Absolutely.
It's like trying to translate a feeling into a spreadsheet.
Yes.
And that's where Gillis's insight about making up stories comes in.
Yeah.
She's talking about how survivors tend to create these narratives that blame themselves or imagine others think poorly of them.
Right.
So wait, instead of focusing on what the abuser did,
Yeah.
you get caught up in what other people
Yes.
might be thinking.
It's almost like a self-defense mechanism.
Oh.
We try to rationalize the abuser's behavior,
Right.
make sense of the chaos, even if it means turning the blame inward.
Wow.
Gillis actually gives this powerful example.
Yeah.
She says, one client told me, he only hits me when I'm bad.
Wow. That really drives home the point, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And this tendency to make up stories can really hinder your ability
Okay.
to advocate for yourself.
Right.
If you're caught up in self-blame,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to present a clear, concise case to
Yeah.
those who need to hear it.
And that can make you vulnerable
Yes.
to further manipulation
Exactly.
from the abuser, too.
Yes.
Right.
It's like they're still pulling the strings even after you've left.
They try to.
They do.
Yeah.
But Gillis's work is all about cutting those strings.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the red flags,
Mhm.
not just in past relationships,
Right.
but in future ones as well.
Right.
Because let's face it,
Yeah.
the things that make you leave
Yeah.
are often the same things
Right.
that were there all along.
It's like finally seeing that red flag for what it is,
Yes.
not a cute little quirk.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
And once you've gone through this process,
Mhm.
you develop a radar
Yeah.
for toxic behavior.
Okay.
You come out of this experience stronger,
Right.
wiser,
Yeah.
and more equipped to protect yourself.
Like earning a PhD
Yes.
in self-preservation.
Exactly.
Okay. So you've got documentation.
Right.
You're working on your narrative.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Well,
Gillis really pushes protecting yourself financially and legally, too.
absolutely.
Right.
It's about taking those practical steps.
Okay.
Changing passwords,
Yeah.
updating bank accounts,
Yeah.
being mindful of shared online documents.
Wow.
It's like building a fortress around your life, brick by brick.
Because the abuser will often try to maintain control.
Oh, yeah.
Even after separation,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, it's about cutting those ties, establishing those boundaries,
Mm.
and reclaiming your independence.
Oh.
It's not about revenge.
Right.
It's about taking back your power.
Now, this is something I found really striking.
Okay.
Gillis admits that even as a therapist, specializing in this field,
Wow.
she was in denial
Mm-hmm.
about her own experience.
Right.
That's got to be a tough realization.
It's a powerful reminder that anyone can be a victim of abuse.
Right.
It doesn't discriminate based on profession education
Yeah.
or social standing.
So true.
It really highlights the need for us to talk about this
Yeah.
more openly.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the patterns,
Yeah.
understanding the dynamics,
Yes.
and knowing that it's never your fault.
Never.
But speaking of systems,
Yeah.
Gillis hits hard on how the legal system
Yeah.
often fails survivors,
It does.
especially when it comes to non-physical forms of abuse.
Right.
It's not like a black eye that everyone can see.
Right. It's invisible.
Right.
She actually uses the pandemic as an analogy,
Okay.
which I thought was brilliant.
Okay.
Remember all the unknowns?
yeah.
Nobody knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Systems were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And there was this feeling of chaos
Yeah.
and uncertainty.
And that's what it feels like,
It is.
to be navigating the legal system after experiencing this kind of abuse.
Absolutely.
You're in uncharted territory, lost in a maze.
You're grasping for answers,
Yeah.
trying to make sense of a system
Mm-hmm.
that feels designed to work against you.
So what does Gillis suggest?
Well,
How do you even start to navigate this maze?
she actually recommends,
Okay.
and this might surprise you,
Okay.
that you consider choosing a boring attorney.
Wait, really?
I know.
I thought we wanted someone fierce.
I know, right?
Someone who'd fight tooth and nail.
That's what's so counterintuitive about it.
Okay.
But Gillis argues that those flashy, aggressive types
Mm-hmm.
might not actually have your best interests at heart.
Interesting.
It's almost like they're playing a game,
Uh-huh.
racking up points,
Yeah.
while you're left picking up the pieces.
Okay, so what should we be looking for then?
Someone who actually listens,
Okay.
who takes the time to understand your story,
Hmm.
who validates your experiences,
Yeah.
and who doesn't try to downplay the severity of the abuse.
They need to be able to break it down clearly.
Yes,
Right.
clearly.
Someone who makes you feel like a partner,
A partner,
not just a case file.
not a case file.
Exactly.
Exactly. And someone who's realistic
Okay.
about the limitations of the legal system.
Right.
They're not promising you the moon.
Huh.
They're preparing you for a long, hard fight.
Yeah.
But they'll be there beside you
Mhm.
every step of the way.
It's about managing expectations.
Yes, right.
Managing expectations.
Not setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah.
Because the system isn't always going to deliver
Right.
the outcome you desire.
Right.
And that can be incredibly disheartening.
It can.
Right.
You're putting your faith in this system, hoping it will protect you,
Yeah.
and then it falls short, which is exactly why
Yes.
a strong support system
Yes.
is absolutely essential.
Absolutely.
And that's where we'll pick up
Okay.
in part 2
Yeah.
of this deep dive.
Okay.
We'll talk more about building that support system
Yeah.
and reclaiming your power after post-separation abuse.
I'm ready. Picking up where we left off,
Right.
that feeling of the legal system failing you
Yeah.
can be crushing.
It's like you're being victimized all over again.
It is.
So when the system lets you down, who do you turn to?
Yeah.
What does building a support system actually look like
Yeah.
for someone going through this?
Gillis talks about the importance of surrounding yourself
Okay.
with people who truly get it, who believe you,
Yeah.
and who can offer that unwavering support
Right.
without judgment.
It's more than just practical help, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Think about it. You've been through this
Yeah.
incredibly traumatic experience, your sense of self, your trust in others, it's all been shaken.
Wow. Yeah.
You need people
Yeah.
who will remind you that your worth is not tied to a court ruling,
Right.
that you are strong,
Yeah.
and that you will get through this.
It's like finding those solid anchors
It is.
when the storm's raging around you.
Exactly.
But Gillis also talks about how post-separation abuse
Yes.
often has a huge financial component,
Yes.
which can be really difficult to talk about.
Absolutely. Abusers often use finances as a weapon,
Okay.
trying to control their victims
Right.
by limiting access to funds, sabotaging job opportunities,
Wow.
or even racking up debt in their victim's name.
It's another way to maintain that grip on power,
It is.
even after the relationship has ended.
Yeah.
It's so insidious.
It is.
isn't it?
But Gillis offers some really practical advice for how to fight back.
Okay.
She talks about opening separate bank accounts,
yeah.
changing passwords,
Great.
and keeping a detailed record of all financial transactions.
It's about reclosing your financial independence,
It is.
step by step.
Step by step.
But I imagine that can feel incredibly daunting,
Yes.
especially if you've been financially dependent
Yes.
on the abuser.
Right.
Where do you even begin?
It's not easy,
Yeah.
but it is possible.
Okay.
Gillis emphasizes reaching out for help.
Okay.
There are resources available,
Mm-hmm.
organizations that specialize in supporting survivors of
Right.
financial abuse.
Okay.
And remember, each step you take, no matter how small, is a victory.
You know, it's amazing to me how Gillis seamlessly weaves together
Yeah.
her personal and professional experiences
Mhm.
in her work.
It definitely gives her insights a depth and an authenticity that
Yeah.
you don't often see.
Right.
She's not just talking the talk, she's walked the walk.
And that makes her message all the more powerful.
Absolutely.
It's like she's a guide leading others through the labyrinth
Mm-hmm.
she herself had to navigate.
Exactly. And you know what's really inspiring? Gillis shares that she found a sense of healing and purpose by helping other survivors.
Okay.
She literally turned her pain into purpose.
That's incredibly powerful.
It is.
It reminds me of the saying,
Oh, yeah.
the wound is the place where the light enters you.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
And by sharing her story and offering guidance,
Right.
Gillis is helping to break the isolation
Yeah.
that so many survivors experience.
Creating that sense of community of not being alone in this fight
Right.
is so crucial.
So crucial.
It's like a ripple effect, isn't it?
I love that.
One person's strength empowering another.
I love that analogy. And it makes me think about something else Gillis talks about.
Okay.
The societal pressure to get married,
Oh, yeah.
particularly for women.
Yeah.
It's almost like it sets them up
Right.
to be more vulnerable in these situations.
That's such an important point. It's like we're told that marriage is the ultimate goal,
Right.
the measure of our worth.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't achieve that, well, then what's wrong with you?
Exactly. And this societal pressure can blind us to those red flags.
Yeah.
We end up settling for less than we deserve,
Right.
all because we're chasing this happily ever after fairy tale.
And then we find ourselves trapped
Yes.
in these toxic relationships, wondering how we got there.
Exactly.
It's like we're so busy looking for the prince
Yes.
that we miss the monster lurking beneath the surface.
Gillis really challenges those societal norms head on.
Okay.
She talks about the importance of questioning those expectations,
Mm-hmm.
of choosing a path that's right for you,
Right.
regardless of what society dictates.
It's about reclaiming your autonomy, defining your own version of happiness.
Yes.
And sometimes that means choosing not to get married
exactly.
or choosing to end a marriage that's no longer serving you.
Right. It's about prioritizing your own well-being,
Yes.
your own safety, your own peace of mind,
Right.
above all else.
Which can feel like a radical act.
It can, especially in a society that so often values appearances over authenticity.
It's about breaking free from those societal constraints
Yes.
and living a life that's truly aligned with your values.
Your values.
And you know what?
What?
Sometimes that means doing things
Yeah.
that make other people uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable but powerful.
It's about having the courage to choose yourself,
Yes.
even when it's hard,
Yes.
even when it means going against the grain.
Against the grain. And you know what I love about Gillis's work?
With that.
It's not just about surviving abuse, and it's about thriving afterwards.
Okay, yeah.
She talks about how proud she is
Yeah.
when her clients start dating again and are able to spot those red flags
Yeah.
from a mile away.
It's like they've developed this internal compass
Yes.
guiding them toward healthy, fulfilling relationships.
Yes. They've learned to trust their gut to value their own needs and boundaries.
And that's what makes this deep dive so valuable,
I think so too.
isn't it?
It is.
It's about more than just understanding the problem of post-separation abuse.
Right.
It's about equipping ourselves and others
Yes.
with the tools to heal and create solutions.
And this makes me think,
Yeah.
what role does awareness play in all of this?
Right.
How can we shift the conversation to be more preventative,
Yeah.
to stop this kind of abuse from happening in the first place?
That's a great question.
It is.
And it's something we'll explore further
Yeah.
in the last part of our deep dive
Okay.
into the work of Katie Gillis. So we've talked about the deeply personal journey of healing
Yes.
and the often frustrating realities of the legal system.
Right.
But you ended part 2 with a question that's really stuck with me. How do we move from reaction to prevention
Yeah.
when it comes to post-separation abuse?
Gillis doesn't shy away from the bigger picture.
Okay.
She talks about how we need to shift our focus from just fixing survivors to really dismantling the systems that enable abusers in the first place.
So instead of putting all the weight on the person who's been harmed,
Yes.
we need to look at why this kind of abuse is so pervasive to begin with.
It's about addressing those underlying societal norms and power dynamics that allow this behavior to continue.
It's like the root of the problem.
It is the root of the problem.
Yeah.
Gillis highlights the need for education,
Okay.
for open conversations, and
Right.
for holding abusers accountable for their actions.
Because right now, it often feels like the burden of proof,
Yes,
the burden of explanation falls on the survivor.
it does.
Right.
And that can be exhausting and re-traumatizing.
Absolutely.
What if we invested more in preventative measures?
Yeah.
In teaching young people about healthy relationships,
Okay.
about recognizing red flags early on?
Right.
What if we challenged those harmful stereotypes
Yeah.
that contribute to abuse?
It's about changing the narrative. Right?
Changing the narrative completely.
Moving away from this idea
Yeah.
that victims need to be fixed
Okay.
and towards a society that actively works to prevent abuse
Absolutely.
from happening in the first place.
And that requires a real fundamental shift in thinking.
100%.
We need to stop blaming victims
Yeah.
and start holding perpetrators responsible.
Right.
It's not about saying, what could you have done differently, but
Right.
rather, this behavior is unacceptable and there will be consequences.
That's a powerful message.
It is a powerful message.
It's about creating a culture where abuse is not tolerated,
Exactly.
where survivors are believed and supported,
Yeah.
and where abusers are held accountable.
And that brings us back to why Gillis's work is so important.
Absolutely.
She's not just offering advice, she's offering hope.
Hope is so important.
It is.
Yeah.
She's showing survivors that there is a path forward,
Mm-hmm.
a way to reclaim their lives and find peace.
Right.
But she's also challenging all of us to do better, to be better.
It's a call to action, isn't it?
It is.
To be more than just bystanders, to speak up, to support survivors,
Yes.
to educate ourselves,
Yeah.
and to work toward a future
Yes.
where this kind of abuse is no longer a silent epidemic.
And that's what I find so inspiring about Gillis's message. It's a reminder that every single one of us
Yeah.
has a role to play in ending this cycle of abuse.
It's about collective responsibility.
It is.
Yeah.
It starts with awareness, with education,
Right.
and with a willingness to have those uncomfortable conversations.
Exactly, because that's where real change begins.
That's where it starts.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
let's remember that change is possible.
Change is possible.
It might not be easy, it might not happen overnight,
Right.
but it starts with each one of us choosing to be part of the solution.
Absolutely. And that, I think, is a perfect note to end on.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive
Of course.
into the important work of Katie Gillis.
My pleasure.